At Cafe Aurora, mornings were ordinary until the day 5 men in black suits shattered the calm. For towering bodyguards surrounded a gray-haired man clutching a briefcase, their presence silencing even the frying pan's sizzle. Every eye turned as they scanned the room and stopped on her, Kayla Santos, a black waitress who had spent 2 years quietly serving coffee, smiles, and kindness. When the man asked for her by name, her heart froze. Within minutes, she would learn that the old man she'd cared for every morning was far more than he seemed, and that his final wish would upend the lives of a powerful family and change hers forever. But first, please make sure to subscribe the channel and comment below from which city you are watching this video. The morning had started like any other for Kayla Santos, the 29-year-old waitress who had worked at Cafe Aurora for 4 long years. The same creaky floors, the smell of coffee, and the quiet company of regulars who rarely saw her beyond the apron she wore. She had learned to survive the subtle stares, the whispered jokes about being the only black girl behind the counter, and the way customers sometimes hesitated to take change from her hand. But there was one man who never looked at her that way. Robert Whitmore, the elderly gentleman at table 7. For 2 years, he came in every morning at exactly 7:30, ordered black coffee and whole wheat toast, and sat in peaceful silence. His hands trembled when he lifted his cup, so Kayla always helped him cut his toast, pretending not to notice his embarrassment. Over time, their wordless routine became a quiet friendship. So when the suited strangers entered that morning and asked for her by name, Kayla's chest tightened with fear. Her mind raced. Unpaid bills? Her mother's medical debts? Something she didn't know she'd done? Then the man introduced himself, Dr. Hamilton, attorney for the Whitmore family. And in that instant, the world seemed to tilt. Robert Whitmore had passed away the night before, peacefully, in his sleep. But he had left behind something unexpected, specific instructions involving Kayla. As she stood trembling, the entire cafe watched in stunned silence. Her boss worriedly called out her name. The lawyer only smiled and said, on the contrary, she did everything right. Kayla untied her apron, her hands shaking. She didn't know it yet, but leaving that small cafe would mean stepping into a world of power, privilege, and buried prejudice, one that was about to discover how dangerous it was to underestimate her. Dr. Hamilton's office towered above the city's financial district, marble floors, dark wood walls, and an expensive silence that made Kayla's worn sneakers sound out of place. She followed him into a meeting room where 3 people sat, faces carved from entitlement: Victoria Whitmore, elegant and cold; Bradley, her arrogant son; and a young woman who barely glanced up. The lawyer gestured for Kayla to sit. She felt like a defendant awaiting judgment. The reading of the will began. The mansion, art, and $50 million trust went to the family. Relief flickered across their faces until Dr. Hamilton cleared his throat. There was a second part. Robert Whitmore had left his restaurant empire, 47 establishments across 6 states, to Kayla Santos. Silence fell like thunder. Victoria went pale. Bradley choked on his disbelief. That's impossible, he barked. She's a waitress. Kayla's voice trembled. I did know Robert. Every day for 2 years. Victoria laughed cruelly. You called him by his first name? How charming. You must have known exactly what you were doing. Dr. Hamilton slammed the folder shut. Enough. Mr. Whitmore's instructions are clear and legally unbreakable. He handed Kayla a sealed envelope. Inside was a letter written in Robert's own hand, a farewell that would change her forever. He had seen her kindness when no one else did. He had watched her pay for a homeless man's meal, defend a bullied coworker, and show warmth without ever expecting anything in return. She had treated him like a person, not a paycheck. And because of that, he had chosen her to carry on what his family had forgotten, the dignity of feeding others with compassion. When Kayla finished reading, the room was silent except for her quiet sobs. Victoria and Bradley erupted, swearing to destroy her. But Hamilton warned them, any attempt to sabotage her would void their inheritance entirely. Days later, Kayla stood before the glass towers of Whitmore Holdings, now her company. Inside waited 15 regional managers, all white men, all smirking at the sight of her discount dress and trembling hands. Bradley introduced her like a joke, dripping venom into every word. But Kayla refused to flinch. She spoke clearly, presenting facts she'd gathered by visiting 7 restaurants in 10 days, how employees of color were trapped in kitchens, how Black and Latino workers were paid less, and how the company charged poor neighborhoods more for the same meals. The laughter faded. Their smirks stiffened. Then she exposed one of them, a manager who had fired older staff to cut costs, only to tank profits. Her precision stunned them. They didn't know she'd spent sleepless nights studying every report, learning the numbers like survival. Soon, she found allies. Linda Chun, the overlooked CFO, and other employees Robert had quietly believed in, people of color, ignored or demoted, but fiercely loyal. Together, they uncovered what Robert had already suspected. The Whitmores had been sabotaging the company from within. Transfers, fake expenses, missing funds. Bradley was engineering failure to force a cheap sale. Victoria was covering it with legal manipulation. Then one night, Kayla found Robert's old safe. Inside were years of secret recordings, files, and evidence, proof of fraud, racism, and corruption so deep it could destroy them. And for the first time since that morning in the cafe, Kayla smiled. They thought she was powerless, but she now held everything. Evidence, allies, and a plan. 5 days later, the boardroom on the 30th floor gleamed like a stage for power. Glass walls, imported marble, and a view that screamed privilege. It was exactly how Bradley Whitmore wanted it. Intimidating, designed to remind a waitress where she didn't belong. Kayla arrived early, calm but unshakable, carrying only a small briefcase, and flanked by Linda Chun, her quiet but formidable ally. The investors were already seated, 5 white men in tailored suits, their eyes reflecting curiosity and condescension in equal measure. Bradley smiled, dripping with false charm. "Gentlemen, meet our current owner, Kayla Santos. As you can see, she's a bit overwhelmed." His mother, Victoria, added sweetly, "Running a restaurant empire isn't quite the same as serving coffee, dear." Kayla didn't flinch. She took her place at the head of the table, her seat, and began, "Before we discuss any sale, you should know what you're really buying." Bradley scoffed. "Please, these men are here for business, not bedtime stories." Kayla's voice was steady. "Then let's do serious business." She opened her briefcase and began distributing documents, proof of missing millions, offshore accounts, fake invoices, shell companies. "Over $2 million have disappeared under your management," she said coldly. Bradley's smile cracked. "That's absurd." But the investors were already studying the papers. Their murmurs filled the room. Then Kayla gave a signal. The door opened. Dr. Hamilton entered, carrying a box of evidence. Linda connected a laptop to the projector. The screen flickered, and Robert Whitmore's secret recordings came to life. Bradley's voice filled the air. "Cancel the cheap suppliers. Make the numbers look bad. The little black girl will sell fast." Gasps rippled across the table. Next came Victoria, ordering accountants to alter reports, mocking Kayla's race, her background, her worth. The room went silent, heavy, damning silence. Victoria rose, shaking. "You can't use these, they're private." "Not quite," Dr. Hamilton said evenly. Robert recorded everything legally, on his own property, suspecting fraud. One investor pushed his chair back. "This is criminal." Bradley's voice trembled. "She's framing us." Kayla stood, calm as a blade. "Then tell them, Bradley. Tell them what I am." He couldn't speak. Kayla turned to the investors. This company was never broken, it was betrayed. And today, the truth is on record. The power in the room shifted. For the first time, the Whitmores weren't in control. Kayla was. The silence that followed was absolute. The investors exchanged uneasy glances, the evidence still glowing on the screen like firelight. One of them finally spoke, calm but firm. "Miss Santos, it seems your company is in far better hands than we were told." Kayla smiled softly. "You're right. Whitmore Holdings was never a failing business. It was a test, one the privileged failed and the underestimated passed." Dr. Hamilton placed a final envelope on the table. "For the record," he said, "copies of this evidence have been forwarded to the FBI, the IRS, and the press." Victoria's face drained of color. Bradley's hands trembled. "You can't do this," he muttered. "We're family." Kayla turned to him, calm and unflinching. "Family doesn't destroy what it inherits. Family doesn't use words like little black girl behind closed doors." The investors rose, shaking Kayla's hand one by one, ignoring the Whitmores entirely. The meeting was over, and so was the era of arrogance. Days later, news headlines blazed with the Whitmore scandal, fraud, racism, corruption exposed. Within months, indictments followed. The once powerful family's empire had collapsed, while the woman they tried to humiliate stood stronger than ever. 6 months passed. Kayla Santos appeared on the cover of Forbes, crowned Breakthrough Businesswoman of the Year. Whitmore Holdings had become a model of inclusion and profitability, expanding nationwide under her leadership. At the grand opening of a new flagship restaurant, Kayla stood before a crowd of employees, now diverse, respected, and united. She cut the ribbon beside a framed photo of Robert Whitmore. "Thank you," she whispered, "for proving that kindness is power." Her friend Marcus smiled from the crowd. He knew exactly what he was doing, he said quietly. Because Robert's greatest lesson wasn't about money. It was about dignity, about how compassion can topple cruelty, and how the underestimated can rise to unimaginable heights when given a single chance. As the cameras flashed and applause filled the room, Kayla's words echoed in every heart that listened. The best revenge isn't destroying those who doubt you. It's building something so great they'll spend the rest of their lives wondering how they ever looked down on you.